Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Houndations podcast. I'm your host, Tony Peterson, and today I'm chatting with my good buddy, Josh Miller, owner of Riverstone Kennels and all around badass dog trainer. Look, this is a fun one for me. Josh is a great dude who has been a dog trainer for a long time now. I have to say, I just love his approach. He's realistic about dogs and their abilities while still asking a lot out of them and holding them accountable. He's also just fair and entirely focused on the long game development of sporting dogs. In this episode, we get into all kinds of topics, including managing old hunting dogs, developing dual purpose hunting dogs, and just learning to take a slow and steady approach to ensure that our sporting dogs can reach their full potential. So buckle up because he drops a ton of killer info on this one. Josh Miller, it's good to see you, buddy.
You too, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
You're one of my favorite people to talk to in the industry. You and I have known each other pretty long now. I mean, I think we probably met when you were like early, young 20s. You've been going hard with Riverstone Kennels. Your wife's out there whelping puppies like crazy. I see you getting the kids involved. You're a busy fella, and I know that. So thank you for coming on. I've been looking forward to this one for a while.
Yeah, man. No, likewise. It's funny that you say that because I was actually thinking about that before jumping on here. Man, like we've known each other for a long time, and just kind of the growth that we both had during that time, and kind of the path that they've taken, and how we've taken those paths. But one thing that I do really love about this industry is like friendships like you and I have. Like the growth that we've had, and still I could not talk to you for 8 months, and call you up and we talk like we just talked yesterday. So it's been fun, man. It's fun seeing you doing this show, and you've done so great in the past with your other shows. So yeah, I'm excited to be on here.
So I was thinking about that because I think our first point of contact was at Game Fair here in the Twin Cities. I'm sure that's where we met first. But I remember interviewing you for a Gun Dog magazine article. I mean, probably like 10 years ago now, 9, 10 years ago on shed antlers. And I remember thinking like this guy not only knows his shit, he's probably going to be here a while. Like, because you know how it is. Like sometimes you bump across people who are kind of like a rising star, and for whatever reason, usually because the business side drags them down. They like a little bit of recognition and being sort of known as like a flashy new trainer or whatever. But the people who can't manage the business side of things usually get flushed out pretty quick. But you're still here. You're still crushing it. I want to talk to you about dual purpose dogs, upland dogs that also do waterfowl, vice versa. Uh, but also just what dogs are capable of, because you do a lot of different stuff with dogs. You train a lot of different ways. You're involved in a lot of different things. But before we get into that, I saw a post you guys put up over there on Instagram where you had an 11.5-year-old lab, yellow lab, I think, out in North Dakota. I think it had a Sharpie in its mouth, sharp tail. You took an 11.5-year-old dog out there and hunted with it. How did that go?
Yeah, so it was actually probably a hen mallard is,
Oh,
is
okay.
probably what it was. Yeah, because we didn't do any upland hunting, but man, like I'll tell you what. So I'm in for a lot of heartbreak. My family's in for a lot of heartbreak here in the next few years because I have two setters. That one is 14, and she currently has bladder cancer, so she's unfortunately on her final few probably days here. I have my other setter who is 12 and a half. He has a heart murmur, and he's kind of having some health issues. And then I've got Clyde, who's the dog you're talking about there. He's a yellow lab. He's been a part of our breeding program for a long time. He's 11 and a half, and I've got Brock, who's one of our other. He's probably our most well-known lab that we have in the breeding program. He's 10 and a half. And so you just kind of start going down the line. You're like, oh my gosh, like this is, it's coming, right? Like, um, I always tell people, like, you sign up for this day. You sign up for that day when you pick up, any dog, or bring a dog in your family. And honestly, I just feel blessed that, we've got, between those 4 dogs, we have 4 very full lives, that we've lived. And so I am very grateful for that. But it changes a lot of things. So like that dog you're talking about there, um, there's a reason he went out to North Dakota for opener, right? So I'm always trying to find where are the easiest hunts, so for a dog like that, like, he's still very happy, very active, but he's to a point that, you know, his heart wants to say yes, 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 but sometimes the legs don't always agree with that, or, the knees don't always agree with that. So I do manage, both he and Brock a little differently. Like those two, man, they've traveled the country with me. They've been up in Canada. They've done all these places. Um, and they've done everything from, breaking ice to, big water to, big field setups, flooded field setups, the whole nine yards. But, now at this point, with both of them, where their heart is saying yes and their legs aren't saying no, I'm trying to put them in the position where they don't have to, really fight the legs saying no, right? So I'm trying to find, the easiest hunts I can. So generally speaking, an opener hunt like what we're talking about here in North Dakota this last week, that's about as easy a hunt I could come up with because I always say when I go to the Dakotas, if I don't have to pack waders, I'm not packing waders. Like, I love dry field hunting. I wanna be in, early season, it's a lot of stubble fields, but it's my goodness, such easy setups for these dogs, right? Those stubble fields are great little setups, for the dogs. They're not fighting water, they're not fighting muck. We can set them up in a place that is just easy on them body-wise, and then I just have to be smart, right? So, like, I'm not gonna line, him up on 250-yard blind and even attempt it, right? Because like for him especially, the one thing I'm fighting with him is he's losing his hearing, and so um, what's interesting is that he can hear certain things really well. So like a lot of times what I'll do on our Riverstone Kennels social pages is I'll do stories on our hunts and kind of show people and kind of bring them into. I oftentimes don't even pull the trigger. I'm just kind of running my phone and doing the videos. And I really want to show these hunts from a dog centric side, because for me that's why I'm there. Like I mean, shoot, I think I waterfall hunted 92 days last year, and I don't think I went through a full case of shell. Yeah, I just like I love being out there with the dogs. I love being present with them, and so I'm always trying to tell the story through the dog's lens. So I'm always trying to show that side of it. But as people saw in that story, and there were times that boom, 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 birds fall, and I kind of pan over to Clyde. And I'm like, Clyde, just send him and he doesn't move. I'm like, Clyde, he doesn't move. Clyde, he doesn't move. And then finally, like, I don't know if it was a pitch or I don't know if he, just he heard it and then boom, he's gone. But then the whistle, if I had a whistle stop him, I blow the whistle and he's boom, he's right there. He's turning around, he's looking for a cast. So you could obviously hear the whistle really well. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not even going to attempt running a big blind
Right.
with him because what if he can't hear me? What if he gets, so for me, handling changes, right? So I just have to put him in the situation to succeed. And I'll tell you what, man, like it makes you appreciate things differently. Like I think we all go through those early dog phases where naturally there's going to be the frustration of, yeah, basically you have a freshman, trying to play on the varsity team. Like he's not really ready for it yet. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to take in. And then you kind of get to the point that, hey, like, yeah, now you've got the starter on the team, right? Like you're the prime. And then you get to this phase. And, the reality is like for me, like I just, and this is where I encourage people, to kind of go with the flow of your dog. Like if you're there for the dog, be conscious of that. Like, don't be putting your old dog in these big, difficult hunts to where, yeah, it's gonna, hurt. It's gonna, be, very difficult. It's gonna, set them up for failure. For me, that's where I just really try to cherry pick, those hunts. And then too, then afterwards, right, the recovery, like I make sure that I have the proper meds, yeah, at home to where when we come back, I don't want him to be sore the next day. I handle him differently too. Like a lot of times when we're traveling, especially in North Dakota, I bring a couple of crates and my dogs, when they're not hunting, they'll be in those crates. Of course, they take them for walks and exercise, of course, but, they're in those crates. Well, not for him, right? Especially after he goes and he runs a bunch. I'm not gonna have him, lay in a crate
Right.
where he's gonna get stiff and he's gonna have a hard time. So it's definitely different. Um, but I'll tell you what, man, like I just think if you can put your ego aside and you can really do the hunt for the dog, I think there's so much to appreciate about, just this. Appreciate the gray hairs, appreciate the experience, appreciate that here he is at 11 and a half years old, and he wants to be nowhere else than right there. I mean, that's just it's special.
What are you using? So recovery wise, because that's a big issue. My older lab is 12 and a half now. So she is definitely, I mean, she's as retired as she's ever going to be. I might take her out and do a small water duck thing with her yet. Like I'm kind of looking at that because I could get her to walk 100 yards to this pond and sit next to me, and that would be it, right? But what are you using, like when you bring a dog like that home after it's done, that hunt in North Dakota, whatever, like what are you giving it to help with the quality of life?
Yeah, so one, I think feeding a proper nutrition is very, very important. And I think there's a couple, brands out there that do a really good job at feeding or at providing a very premium food. It's just like an athlete, right? Like you don't see any of these, big athletes, they're not, driving through and filling up on McDonald's on the way home from practice every day, right? Like, fueling the right way is a really big part of this. But then like, especially a dog like that, like, yeah, I'm bringing, some meds like Rimadol or Carprofen, which is very similar. And yeah, I'm having that on hand to where it's basically like call it like an Advil or an ibuprofen, for these
Yep.
dogs to where like for Clyde, like he is gonna be sore. There's just no doubt about it. He's gonna be sore. So what can I do to help him manage that? Because to me, that's the difference of him getting one hunt in on this trip or maybe two or three. I'm also not hunting him back to back days, just wearing him out. Now one thing I should clarify too is because you had mentioned, Tony, you had mentioned that you want to do maybe a small water hunt, with your older dog. Some dogs, the water hunt is the easy
Yep.
hunt, right? Especially if it's the right water. For Clyde, so Clyde had an injury when he was probably, 6, and he really jammed his shoulder really bad. And, now he's good now, but he does get really sore on the shoulder. And one thing that my vet said was that, swimming is actually going to be more difficult for him because that swimming motion, it's gonna hurt him more. You can see it. Like he still does water work, but he doesn't want to do it
Right.
like he used to, right? So you can tell he knows that. So for me, that's where I go, okay, what is your easy hunt? Well, your easy hunt is stay out of the water, right? Where, like your dog, Tony, like your dog might be the easy hunt might be in the water because it's not the pounding on the body, right? So to me, it's all about finding what your hunt is. I really think waterfall hunts, especially for these older dogs, it's so much easier than even going on a half hour to an hour, long upland walk. Just naturally, right? It's less wear and tear. They're still out there. They're still doing everything they want to do. But instead of an hour long run, you're doing, you know, 6 to 10, 30-second, sprints, if you will. So it's just easier on them.
Yeah. And that's a really good point because my dog responds the best now to swimming. If she spends any amount of time running around it on, even in, working a little bit of fun retrieves in a soccer field or something, I can tell she needs to recover from that. And she does as well from swimming too, but she seems to respond more positively from that. And so that's a really good point. How did your dog do that shoulder injury? What did that come from?
I can't remember exactly what it was now, because I don't think it was anything that was like, boom, there it was injury wise. All of a sudden, one day, he just was like really favoring, that one shoulder. And one thing I think is so neat is like when you get a really good vet, like one that is so sporting dog specific, especially, that's when they can really dial and tell you those types of things because it probably would have taken me a significant amount of time to realize, well, the swimming is harder on him,
Right.
right? Well, because my vet is sporting dog specific and knows that's what I do, she was able to say, "Hey, just, know going into this, this is gonna be more difficult for him." So for me, I'm always looking for how can I get the most out of him? Well, if swimming hurts him, I'm not gonna force him to be back in there swimming in the water. I can run a similar type of a concept on land and make it to where it's not discomforting for him. Now, of course, there are times like when it's hot in the summer, right? Like I still want to do even if it's little water work. But then for me, especially being older, right? But even, even after that injury, it's like well, I'm not really gonna push you and force you through anything that's super technical or because, you're gonna be fighting a pain or discomfort too. So, to me, I'm always looking at that per dog, right? So every dog is gonna be different with that. Brock, okay, so Brock, I really wanted this to be that it was my 2 old dogs that I took out there. So I was planning on being out there for about 6, 7 days. And, I'm really, really big on scouting. So I love duck hunting, in particular. I love waterfowl hunting in general, but I love duck. And, I just really enjoy the process, right? So I would rather spend 2 days scouting and 1 day hunting, spend 2 more days scouting, 1 day hunting, rather than try to hunt every morning, scout every afternoon, and just try to get a bunch of hunts in. Like I want it to be really successful. I think the dogs enjoy it more. I think we enjoy more, and then too, like instead of getting 2 to 3 birds on hunt, we can shoot a 5, 6 man limit, and the dogs get more work. And I just think for me, I enjoy that part, but I really enjoy the scouting process too. And so my plan was, if we're out there for 7 days and can get, 4 hunts in, well, then each of the dogs are going to get two. And so Brock, again, he's 10 and a half. I was really nervous that he did something to his ACL because he was really favoring his back right leg really bad. And so we brought him in and they think he just tweaked his groin. So, of course, still not going to bring him, still need time, to recover. And of course, your recovery time at 10 and a half is not what it would have been at, 2 and a half. And so unfortunately, he didn't get to go. But now for me, now my objective now is, okay, where's that next easy hunt, right? Or where's the next easy hunt that I can get Brock into? And then Clyde, like, man, it's a heartbreaking thing to think about, but it's like any one of these hunts could be the last one. And I promise you, man, that is in the forefront of my mind every single time I send them a retreat, but especially when I'm like winding down towards the end of a hunt, man, it like you just don't know.
Right.
You don't know if it's the last one. And it's I'm just glad that I'm at an age now where I feel like I can appreciate that. Like I feel like when I lost Ethan, I was, gosh, I was probably late 20s. Um, and I think I understood it, but I don't think I understood like I understand it now. It's you just go through life and you have these experiences and you realize that every time you say that name, it could be the last time, and that's pretty heavy.
Oh, buddy, I know, man. Dealing with this with having Luna be 12 and a half is just tough. I mean, but like you said, my last dog died at 6. That was a disaster. This dog, and I talked to Doc about it a lot, especially when I was getting Luna. It's like at a certain point you realize you've done so much with these dogs. Like I think about like my big regrets with my last one are like I just didn't get to do a whole bunch of stuff. When your dog dies at prime age, you're like, we didn't go here, we didn't do this, we could have done this more, and it really sucks. But when you take care of them and you manage them like you're talking about, I mean, Luna hunted a little bit last year, but 2 years ago, I had her out pheasant hunting and still doing the stuff that she loves, shot some grouse and ducks and woodcock with her. And I look back at her life with me and I'm like, man, that dog, we did a lot. We did a lot of shed hunting. We did a lot of waterfowl hunting, a ton of upland. And I'm like, she lived a good life. And so now it's just a matter of like, is there any little opportunity to kind of squeeze it in for her or do something that's still good for her? But the overall theme that you talked about there, where like it's in the back of your mind that you send that dog out and it's like, this could be the last one ever with this dog. That doesn't go away. You think about it all the time. Like, I mean, this is like morbid to joke about, but I come home sometimes and, if Luna's sitting or sleeping on her dog bed in our bedroom, she's not meeting me at the door like the pup is. Sadie's there waiting, tail going nuts. And
Uh,
every time I walk in, I'm like, God, I hope she's still alive, because it's like
mm,
she's not there like she was. And, then I'll hear her clomping down the hallway and you're like, okay, well, we got one more day, but just knowing it's coming sucks so much.
yeah, yeah, man. I think the hardest part for me is, um, and unfortunately, most of us have to make the decision,
Right.
right? Like, yeah, I cannot tell you, man, how many times I've prayed, please just let me wake up. And it was peaceful in the sleep and unfortunately, and every situation is just different, right? Like I can, like I said earlier, like talk about your 6-year-old dog, man, like obviously through the years now with how many clients and how many dogs we've trained and how many, puppy clients, we've had and, there's freak accidents and there's things that happen and yeah, I mean, you just feel for that. And one thing that's really interesting is like, my first dog that I lost, I was filled with so much regret, man. Like I was like, gosh, he never went to Canada. He never went to Arkansas. He never went to all these things, which of course now is a norm for my
Right.
dogs. Um, and but he didn't know that. Like he was just happy to go, he was happy to go on a little pond hunt in Wisconsin with me and shoot 2 wood ducks, like he just thought, yeah. And so to me, it's so interesting because like I have those conversations with people. Yeah, fairly often. It happens more and more all the time because the longer that you're in the game, the more dogs and people that you're able to connect with and be a part of their life. They move on, and it's just so interesting. Like I think there's always going to be that regret of you didn't get to do something with that dog, and but man, like look at all the things you did get to do with them, right? And like
Right.
some of it's just situational. Like my first dog, man, I had in high school and in college, I couldn't afford gas to go to the trip, let alone actually go on the hunting trip, right? So like, yeah, he just had me in a time of my life where that wasn't a thing, and so I just the more and more it's just to me, it's just like, man, I just want every one of these dogs to get the most out of their life and out of their time with me. And, fortunately enough, I have a profession where I can do that. But man, like, yeah, that decision to me that's the worst day,
Right.
is you having to make that because you're always going to have like, was it the right time? Was it but then again, like you wouldn't get a puppy and sign up for that day all over again if that ride wasn't worth
Right.
having to make that decision.
Right. Well, and I mean, you mentioned way earlier about handling your older dogs, and the first thing you said was proper nutrition. That's something that sort of gets thrown around a lot, but like an easy way to frame this up, like given the context of this conversation, is there have been pretty comprehensive studies on the how long dogs can live, right? And how long the average
Uh-huh.
dog will live. And an overweight dog is on average going to die 2 years younger than a dog that's kept in really good shape. And so when you think about
And that's just life, right? That's not like athletic life. That's not like, no injuries, no all that stuff. And you're right, man. Like a lot of dogs are just overweight.
right, and this is I mean, this topic comes up a lot on this podcast and other ones, and I know people are sick of hearing it, but the reality is like oftentimes we aren't the best judge of our dog's physical fitness, right? Like we're so biased. The same thing, you talked about, like your dog with a shoulder injury will swim, and it would swim every single time you asked it to because that's what they do. But it's up to you to decide whether that's a good thing to do for that dog or not. And you have to
Right.
step outside the ego a little bit and go, no matter how much I want that and no matter how much he'll do that, that's not the best thing for him. It's the same thing, like if you take that dog into the vet and it's 7 pounds heavier than it was last year at its yearly checkup or whatever, your vet's like, hey, this dog could drop 10 or 20%. That's in the interest of the dog's health. Like it's not a reflection on you. Like make those changes, like cut down on the treats, whatever you have to do, cut down on the daily feeding, which is the easiest way to cut their weight, right? Like manage their intake. But the end goal of that is, potentially going to be a couple extra years of that dog being with you. That's a huge deal.
It's a huge deal. And this is again why I really love sporting dog specific vets, right? Because reality is majority of people listening to this are looking at their dogs as athletes and as gun dogs, right? Like even if they're not, a lot of this still applies. Actually, to me, all of it still applies, right? Because a sporting dog vet is just going to be a little more, crucial on like not having the dog overweight because they understand not only the risk of injury, but worse, right? Like North or South Dakota opener, I think for pheasants is this weekend, isn't it?
Yep.
Um, I mean, like going in there, like the number of dogs, think of the number of dogs that are overweight, have been sitting on the couch for the last 8 months, and then they're going to go be asked to run a marathon. Like it's actually crazy. And this is where to me, not to, totally go on a soapbox, but like to me, we all humanize our dogs to a point. I think, every one of us can say we're guilty of that, right? Some more than others, of course, but yeah, I think all of us are guilty of that. But I think what's interesting is that, yeah, I've said this a lot. I really think that people humanize their dogs until it's no longer convenient to humanize
Right.
them, right? So like that situation right there, you would never ask uh 30-year-old man that has been sitting, not doing a single workout, a single anything, sitting on the couch, overweight, and then be like, hey, you're going to go run a marathon for 4 days in a row while we're out here on this hunt. Like you wouldn't ask that, right? But, of our dog, we would do
Right.
it. And we had a client a few years ago, and she's super nice. And we've since had like this dog that turned out to be really, really nice. But I remember the first time she came in with her husband. and the dog was overweight. And I'm very open about that. I feel like respectfully, but very open about it because, like, for me, if I'm going to have your dog for 3, 4 months and have the dog in train, the dog has to be at the mental peak of what it can be to get the most out of this time. Well, to be at the mental peak, you have to be at the physical peak. Like there's no person, no animal that has ever been physically out of shape and mentally just been like at the epitome, right? Like they do work hand in hand. And so the first thing I told him, I was like, guys, like I'm gonna have to cut some weight off this dog. I mean, it looked like a beer keg with legs. I mean, it was so out of shape. And yeah, and she didn't like it at first. And she's like, I want my dogs fat and happy. And I said, man, with all due respect, those two words do not go hand in hand. They don't belong in the same sentence
No,
together, because and it's the same with people, right? Like you just there's a level of especially being an athlete that you just have to be at a certain mental and physical condition for you to be able to perform at the highest level. And so, again, I think sporting dog vets do a great job being critical
right.
of, hey, this is where I think your dog should be versus where it is. And that's why I really push people, especially anyone that has a sporting dog, find yourself a sporting dog vet because a lot of vets, just the reality, you think about the masses, right? The masses, if you're listening to this and you are a gun dog owner, a sporting dog owner that owns an athlete, you are the minority. Between you look at all the Shih Tzus and Chihuahuas and name a breed, poodle, right? That is at home, that is just a family value. I have nothing against that. I think a part of the family is where a dog should be. I think it's a fantastic thing. But the vast majority of dogs out there are not being looked at as athletes. So an average vet is going to see much more of them than they are of your athlete. And so for me, like if I have a sports injury, I want to go to a doctor or a specialist that deals with those sports injuries, right? And so to me, finding the right vet to have, I always say to have on your team because I do think it's a big deal. Like if there's an issue, I want to call somebody that I know is going to be familiar with what it is I'm talking about. Um, and it's did I lose you there?
No,
I feel like I lost you. It's a big deal. To me, it's a really big deal.
I agree 100%. I want to back up just 1 second, just to clarify this because you mentioned that the Dakota's openers are coming up, but by the time this episode drops, they will have come and gone. So if anybody's listening to this and
Oh,
panicking
there you
that they
go.
hounded too early or anything, you didn't. That's the nature of recording podcasts. Uh,
Right.
you're 100% right. And one of the things I just want to touch on two things before we move on there. The overweight dog thing isn't just your dog could die 2 years earlier. You mentioned this or alluded to this. It's a quality of life issue. So when you think about the impact on the joints and how that dog can function later in life, if it's 10 or 20% overweight, which is not that much with a lot of dogs, you're talking 5 to 10 pounds maybe, which is an easy thing to miss on your own dog, right? The difference in the joint health and some of the other things that can happen that you might not notice when that dog's 4, but could become an issue at 7 versus 10. That's a huge deal. There's a lot to it. The other thing that I just want to touch on quickly here that I 100% agree with you on this is finding the right vet. I mean, I've interviewed tons of veterinarians for my job. Most of them lean into this world pretty hard, but some of them have come from academia. Some of them come from outside. I've dealt with, really good sporting dog vets with my personal dogs, and I've dealt with vets from the Twin Cities who are primarily dealing with those Shih Tzus and Chihuahuas that you're talking about, and the difference is huge. And I will never forget.
Huh.
Um, my dogs, we have, and this where you live, we have really high exposure to ticks up here. You get the spring thing that you can kind of avoid to some extent. Not, I mean, you can't avoid it completely, but you can sort of mitigate it. But then we get that fall tick situation where if you're doing that gross woodcock thing and the temperatures are a little bit higher than normal in the beginning of October, middle October, you can get your dogs can pick up a ton of ticks. And one of the experiences I had with one of my past dogs was a vet who just didn't really consider tick exposure when my dog had some stuff going on. And my dogs are always treated, but there's a level of exposure there where they're going to pick up something over time. Like you can't avoid everything all the time with the over the counter tick stuff. And it was a real eye opener to me because the next vet that we had two labs that she hunted with, and she trained for a ton of different stuff. She would train them to go get laundry out of the laundry basket, like just give them jobs. And she was instantly, when she started explaining that to me, I'm like, this is my person. Like I can tell because she's using this. She's thinking about this dog's mental health as well as its physical health, but how she handled potential tick-borne diseases and that kind of thing. She just viewed it through a different lens, you know. And when you think about the average house dog's going to pick up some ticks every year, not like our dogs, right? Like your dog getting injured, doing something out there and wrenching its shoulder in a weird way. That is a thing that's going to happen to every sporting dog to some level at some point in their life. They're going to have some kind of injury like that. That might never happen to a house dog. And so there is just a difference.
That's right.
I want to talk.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
know that and you mentioned this. You're super into waterfowl hunting. You travel all over, do this a lot, but you also upland hunt too. You train your dogs for shed antlers. Uh, you you're one of the trainers out there who's looking at dogs like, what can we do with them? Not just how do we train them for this thing or that thing, which is of course like a part of the job, but like where else can we include them in our lives? Which I know was sort of the catalyst for a lot of the shed dog stuff back when that started coming on. And I know you looked at it that way. It's like, well, what else can I do with my dog? I'm out walking with him anyway in the woods, scouting deer in the winter or whatever. And now this thing comes out and you're like, okay, well now I have 4 more months of doing something with my dog where it has a job and there's a reward and there's a training aspect to it. And it's just level up the relationship. How how do you deal with, because you understand the potential of dogs that way, and you can see
Mm,
that it could keep going, right? Like there's new things that are going to come out we're going to do with our dogs, service dogs, whatever they do. But a lot of people seem
mm.
to struggle with like a one pursuit dog, or like I just want an upland dog, or I just want a dog that behaves well. And do you feel like a lot of the people you deal with, and maybe it isn't so much with your kennel because you have a lot of sporting dog people obviously, but it feels like people look at dogs and sort of box them in and go, if I could just get here, that would be good enough. And you're looking at it going, they can do this, 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 and this.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think the one thing that gets really overlooked is how talented these dogs are. Yeah, especially you get a dog from a good breeder that is doing it the right way to better the breed to, produce, even better, puppies than what they have. And, you know, that dog is gonna be incredibly capable. The reality is that that dog is also gonna be a product in their environment, right? So if it gets, brought into a house that, you don't do anything with it, um, it's not gonna turn out to be much, right? Because the dog is gonna be a product of the environment you put them in. On the flip side, like, we've had litter mates go home and somebody's like, "Hey, this dog is gonna be a family dog, gonna go to the T-ball games, gonna, basically, I just want it to be obedient, and it might go to the game farm once or twice a year if I have time, and so I want it to be a hunting dog to that extent." And then I've had, because people's lives change all the time, right? And I have one specific, one of mine that I'm kind of talking about, and then that same litter mate went to a home that originally that was the plan, and the dad just got so wrapped up and in love with the training process that that dog went on to field trial, and, like, what he was so wrapped up, he was running hunt tests, he was running trials, he was doing all stuff because he just loved it, right? So, like, what you're saying is, like, that dog that the litter mate is, that did nothing but go to T-ball games and, go to the family reunion and just kinda be a part, probably had the same potential as this other dog did, right? But the other dog, the litter mate, was in a different environment. And so it's really interesting to me, what you can get out of these dogs. And, um, I love the developmental side. I think, that there are steps, to take if you really want, like, so if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, I'm gonna duck hunt and or waterfall hunt and upland hunt. I'm gonna do both." I'm really big on getting the waterfall side dialed in first, because to me, from a waterfall side of things, the number one thing that any waterfall dog needs to do is be steady. I believe, quite frankly, that's more important than going and getting and, picking up the bird and doing the retrieve. I get it. Like, someone could take a shot at that comment and say, "Oh, that's why they're there." I get that. But if your dog is being put in a dangerous situation because they're breaking and getting out in front of those gun barrels while they're going off, to me, one, they're not gonna be nearly be as successful. And two, like, what's the point if you're going to go home without the dog potentially, right? Because we all hear the horror stories of the dog getting shot. And so for me, I want you to be steady. It's very difficult for that, especially a young dog that's doing both, right? And generally speaking, if the dog's going to do both, he's likely going to upland hunt more often than waterfall hunt because there's more opportunity to, right? Anybody can go down to the hunt club or go down to the game farm on a Sunday afternoon and put out 5 6 birds and go do it, right? To actually go and set up for a waterfall hunt to scout and have the spot and set the decoys, it just takes more, right? So what we find is that they're going to upland hunt probably 3 to 1 if you're doing both. Well, if 3 times in a row, your young dog is go, go, go working in front of you, upland hunting, and then all of a sudden you're like, "Hey, you're supposed to sit here and be quiet and still and calm for, the next 4 hours." That young dog's gonna be going, "What in the world are what are we doing here?" Right? Where what we find is if you do the waterfall side first, make him be steady, make him, just, desensitize in that waterfall situation, and have him be a duck dog first, then you can always loosen the reins and have him go up and hunt, right? But to have him go up and hunt and then try to rein in this fire breathing dragon that wants to go, it's much more difficult. And that's where you get the dog that maybe starts whining, maybe he's anxious, maybe he's not wanting to sit still, maybe because he doesn't understand what it is that we're doing here versus if you did that first. So generally speaking, that's what I like to do is take that process. And I'm a very progressional guy. Like I want to watch the process. I want to develop in the right way. Um, one thing that I do with my dogs that I think is incredibly beneficial is I do, I'm a sports guy, so I like sports analogies. I do a thing that I call I red shirt my young dogs. So from a duck dog standpoint, I bring them out. Now they're training, right? So maybe not fully trained. Like I never want to hunt personally. I never want to hunt one of my dogs until they're fully trained because you start bringing them on hunts, everything's now uncontrolled. Uncontrolled situations, uncontrolled, things come up to where all of a sudden you can have bad habits created. And if you're not fully trained, it's going to be much more difficult for a dog to be able to handle that situation. And you're going to put these unnecessary hurdles in front of you. So instead, what I'll do is I'll bring that young dog out again, waterfall situation. I'll bring that young dog out with one of my seasoned dogs and I'll just make him sit there and watch. And what this is doing is a couple things. One, it's allowing them to get out and still experience this stuff, even though they're not fully trained yet, even though I don't want them out there, potentially creating a bad habit. They're learning to sit and be desensitized to all the things that we can't train for, right? We can't train for, 30 mallards dipping around on top of us. We can't train for, hey, let these 4 honkers land because there's 40 coming behind them. They're going to sit down 10 feet in front of this dog. So what happens is that that young dog goes out first, right? And they start going that first time. They have no idea what's going on. And then all of a sudden there's excitement in the blind. Then there's quack, quack, quack on the call. Then there's somebody said, get him and boom, 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 and then I got sent. Well, that young dog starts cutting backwards really quickly, right? So they start going, well, last time there was boom, 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 I got to go. Or last time, that I heard calling, something was going to happen. So now I'm going to get anxious. Now I'm going to get worked up. Or if they have a season of sitting there being desensitized to all that, that year two, when you actually go for, call it your year one hunt, that dog is rock steady solid or rock solid steady rather. They've been desensitized to the whole thing. They're not gonna be like that dog that's ripping down, wanting to break, wanting to be on top of them. And I just think like that's called on the job training, right? Like we're training, we're just doing it in a hunting environment now. And for me, again, the safety side of it is so crucially important. Like my dog, you have to be steady. You have to be. And so I love that red shirt side of it, and then he sits there and honors the older dog, and I love that, and I do think that it helps them reach their quote unquote prime faster because then year two you don't have bad habits you're trying to reel back and try to fix later on. You don't have this issue like for me, it's amazing what these dogs pick up in the field and what they hold on to. Okay, so Ethan was my first dog. I had no idea what I was doing with him. We had 2 dogs growing up as family, so I don't come from a dog, family. We had 2 labs growing up. The most impressive thing either one of them did was catch potato chips out of the air. Like, they were not athletes, they were not hunting dogs, it's just not what they were. And, so, when I got my first dog in Easton, and I poured myself into training, poured myself trying to learn, but I didn't know what was going on, right? So, like, that first year when I took Easton out, waterfall hunting, I was hunting a lot with I had 2 buddies in particular that we'd hunt all over the place. We'd field goose hunt like crazy. We'd duck hunt every chance we got. And, yeah, he broke. And honestly, I didn't know he wasn't supposed to, and he picked up. I was just happy he was picking up birds, right? And so he did this over and over and over and over and over again. Um, well, after that first year, I got hooked up with the local retriever club, learned these dogs aren't supposed to break, learned they're supposed to be steady, learned all this stuff, right? Like at the time, I think I'm 16 years old. And so I worked my tail off at making sure that Easton was steady. That dog ended up being a master hunter, hunter retriever champion, had all these accolades, did all these things. But every single year, he lived to 13 and a half. Every single year that I took him out, that first hunt, he wanted to break. He knew he wasn't supposed to, right? All the training, all the accolades, all the ribbons show that he doesn't do it. But I'm telling you, that first year of breaking all the time, every single year, every first hunt, I had to be on him because he was going to break every single one. And so it's amazing the situational side of things. Because I know some people be like, well, birds make a bird dog. I want to have those experiences, and I'll just fix, the bad habits that come up. And I'm telling you, man, it is not that easy.
Well, and that, I mean, you make a really good point there around steadiness, because anybody who knows anything about waterfowl dogs knows that that is the linchpin that holds the whole thing together. It just is like, but if you're not a hardcore duck hunter, you can look at steadiness and be like, well, it's not that important. Dove hunting, it's pretty important around the house. If you don't want a dog, if you want an obedient dog when you take your kids to the soccer field or whatever,
Yep.
steadiness is an unnatural thing for them because they are not naturally steady, which is why it's so hard to train and
You're
get it to
right.
stick. But it is something that is like it is like a cornerstone of well-behaved dogs in the blind and out of the blind. And it's just
Mhm. You're
it's
right.
an unnatural thing to ask. So like what you said there about, people are like, well, I want my dog to retrieve. Like, yeah, everybody does, right? But your dog already wants
Right.
to do that, most likely. Like that is a very natural inclination for them. So that's partially fun. Like that's fun to do. It's fun to train. It's fun to see that develop. But that's generally a hell of a lot easier than getting them to sit there and watch ducks hit the water or a bumper land and them wait, 10, 20, 30, 40 seconds as you work them down this path. And I know you do
Yeah.
this. Uh,
Yeah.
there are a lot of ways to work in
Very a lot of it.
steadiness almost from the moment you get that 8-week old puppy home, making them wait for 2 seconds to go eat before you let them go eat or whatever. Like there are little things to build that in to get them to understand that that is a thing that will be asked of them, not just in the duck blind 10 times a year, but throughout the entire year in a variety of different ways. And it is, if you don't duck hunt and you're listening to this, the other side of this with upland hunting that, Josh, you deal with this constantly, I'm sure, is the thing that exists in upland that's just like steadiness or probably is a really close parallel is recall, right? Like
Mhm.
I can get my dog to come back in the yard sometimes, but then you
Oh,
get
yeah.
out into the field and it's super exciting. And that dog chases a hen, pheasant or something, and you can't get that dog back because it's an unnatural thing. Like it's another thing that,
Mhm.
yeah, like you could hunt your whole life with a dog. If you can't call it back, you could maybe get away with it. It wouldn't be much fun. It wouldn't be very safe. Like you'd swear a lot, but that thing, that skill is an unnatural thing that they need to know to be good. And it's just it's easy to lean into the fun stuff that they take to naturally, but you can't just live off of that.
No, you're spot on, Tony. One of the things that um, I'll have very respectful debates with people that want to have the other side of it of that I don't want my dogs to be steady, right? Because in a waterfall situation, we're talking here, um, there is no reason, in like I've not heard one yet that justifies the dog not being steady because safety should be the first and foremost on all of our minds, right? And that is going to keep your dog safe. The reality is that if you're the dog handler, you're thinking about the dog. Nobody else is. Everybody else came to pull the trigger, so everybody else is thinking about pulling the trigger. Now, you may be in a certain situation, a certain blind that you feel more safe with it because maybe you're elevated or you're up or whatever. But like ground blinds, pits, layouts. I mean, all these things. Like you are at the dog's level. There is not a more dangerous place on that planet for that dog to be than out in front of the barrels as they're going off. And every single year, I hear about a horror story. And could you imagine watching your dog go and get ripped apart by your buddy pulling the trigger?
Right.
I mean, like, it's a nightmarish situation, like, you don't wanna think about, right? But let's just take that off the table, okay? Safety's off the table, okay? Why would I want my dog to be steady? Your dog is gonna be a more efficient retriever being steady. right? Because if it's sitting there and you knock down 4 birds, your dog can officially mark all 4 of those birds, can go 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, and then can go get one, come back, know where the next one is, reset, go, come back. Because the reality is, if your dog's not steady, you're probably not running blind. You probably don't have the level of control to whistle sit, have them turn and look at you and give them a cast of direction. So if your dog is breaking and, picking up that first bird as it's hitting the water, he's not even seeing birds 2, 3, 4 go down. Doesn't even know they're out there, right? So from an efficiency standpoint, you're a more efficient retriever being steady. But the safety to me, that is like the epitome, yeah, of it. If I mean, I look at my family, right? So like, my dog Strike is my daughter's absolute pride and joy. Like she does everything with that dog, loves that dog. If that dog doesn't come home on a hunt, I'd have no idea what to tell
Right.
her, right? Like, I would rather him not pick up a single bird and come home safe and sound to that little girl than I would with him picking everything up, but, he's breaking and he gets shot. There's just no reason for it. And you're right, like, I think that's a great point, Tony, like, it's unnatural. Like, so much of, upland hunting, you can, as long as you got a good bird and gun introduction, done to where you have a dog that's bird crazy and is good with the guns, you can kinda let an upland, that again, with limited expectations, right? You can let an upland, retriever kinda go and figure it out and learn, because everything's natural, right? He's using his nose, he's tracking, trailing, he's watching it, flush, he's going to pick it up and he sees it go down, right? So, like, you can get away with more of it there. Waterfowl, you have to be under control. Like, obedience is utmost important. I would argue obedience is utmost important on the upland side too, because that can get out of control in a hurry. And again, I think safety is first and foremost. Like, I don't want that dog chasing that hen that we can't shoot, towards that road where there's a F-250 ripping down there at 7 miles an hour, right? And doesn't see the dog. Like, there are just too many things that can come up. Safety should be first and foremost. And I think everybody wants to skip around the obedience because it's not fun, it's not sexy, it's not cool. I can't, do a video and put it on. I think social media is about the worst thing that happened for, for dog, training and dog relationships, with us and our dog, because everyone wants to show like, oh, this cool and fun stuff. I cannot tell you how many people, yeah, like when they call me like, ah, my dog's, when my dog, gets past 50 yards, he doesn't want to whistle set. How do I fix that? I'm like, obedience. And they're like, "No, no, no, he does obedience good." I'm like, "No, like, that's obedience." Like almost any issue you're having can be traced back to an obedience issue. But everybody wants to do, like, some treat training, do some quick on lead, move on, and think, "Hey, I'm past that." And it's like, no, like, obedience is an everyday, entire life, type of an activity. People just have to embrace it.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to understand it. I want to clarify quick because when you talk about steadiness in the duck blind or the boat being a safety thing, here's what happens. You go out there, you have your dog that's going to break, right? And somebody knocks down a mallard and it hits the water, and that shooter or somebody else in the blind decides they're gonna dispatch that cripple on the water, right?
Yeah,
So their
scary.
guns
That's a
aren't
scary
pointed
thing. Yep.
straight up. Their guns are pointed level, and that dog breaks and jumps out of that boat to get over to the side of the boat,
Right,
jump out of the blind.
right.
That's when they get shot. And you may have not have heard that in your life if you're listening to this. I I've heard it plenty. Josh has heard it plenty. It happens.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I mean, it's not like a high likelihood thing, but it gets a hell of a lot more likely if that dog's going to break. And if you're hunting
Uh-huh.
with, more people or people you don't know very well, like they're not going to follow the rules on what happens when a cripple gets knocked down, whatever. Like those things are real. The recall thing with the safety is pretty easy to understand for people, but both of those things, like Josh said, are should be first and foremost. I mean, there is a nice side benefit to those dogs being a hell of a lot more pleasant to hunt with, for sure. But also, like you
Yeah, that's
said,
right.
they're going to come home with you. When you talk about redshirting a pup and bringing it in there to the blind and running an older dog that knows his stuff and just making that younger dog sit back and watch and learn to sort of, you're conditioning it sort of to tune out distraction, which is great, and also just to understand like this is not my call. Like I
Uh-huh.
have to wait for my release command. I have to wait for the okay to go do this. When you do that, I'm assuming that you probably have somebody else running the gun and you're sitting there just running the dog, right?
100%. Yeah, I'm entirely focused on the dog. Like, this is about that dog and that experience. I'll tell you one of the other things that it curbs is I would say the number one thing, especially in season, that I get asked about if people like, how do I fix this? It's whining. A dog that's vocal in the blind. It's just sort of, and just it sounds like Chewbacca, sitting there at the edge of the blind with you, right? Like it's not a fun thing. It's not a pleasant thing. Um, if I could come up with some sort of a system to fix that with 100% of dogs, I'd be the richest dog trainer that ever
Right.
ever was. It's just one of those things. Um, but you know, to me, that's two things. One, I really do believe it's breed. I think noisy dogs produce noisy dogs. I think there's certain lines that just produce it. And for me, as I'm going through and selecting my stud dogs, I have had to break my own heart numerous times because this dog is the real deal. But he was vocal, or he made a noise, or he's making noises because like, I really do believe noisy dogs produce noisy dogs. Now, whether it's a noisy dog or a quiet dog, you can mishandle that dog and make them either noisier or noisy. If you had a naturally quiet dog, make them noisy. And I think the number one way to do that is to bring them out on a hunt like that and have it be go, 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 go. Right. So like, especially if you're on a quick hunt, right? So like that first hunt for that dog, most of us want it to be a slam dunk, right? Most of us want it to be, hey, we've got this flammer field. He's going to get a bunch of retrieves. This can be great for him. He's going to pick up a lot of feathers, a lot of opportunities. And I think there's a lot of validity around that thought. But if it's that first dog time or that first time in the blind for that dog, he's going to be sitting there going, oh my gosh, this is what I get to do next. This is what I get to next. It's like, a lot of times, like when you bring a puppy home, I always say, like, if you bring an 8-week-old puppy home and you start throwing that puppy retrieves, it's a retriever, you're just doing that to validate to yourself that you bought a retriever. Like, you're not teaching the dog anything. You don't that's one thing that I think is kinda interesting when people are like, "Oh, I taught it to retrieve." Well, you didn't teach it to retrieve. Like, mom and dad and grandpa and grandma and genetics taught that dog to retrieve. You didn't teach it to retrieve. But in this situation here, like if you ramp that up and it's just retrieve, 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 retrieve for that dog as a puppy, you're going to create some bad habits with that, right? Just like on this hunt. If it's go, 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 now all of a sudden that dog is jacked up, is on his toenails, right? So the hunt slows down. What happens? That dog is still jacked up and antsy. If I give him a whole season of him going in that blind, sitting and watching everything and not letting him think that I'm gonna get to go get this thing after these guns go off, then I just bring that right back and I chill that out. Now, I do understand, like, 'cause I know there's people that are listening to this being like, "There's no way I'm bringing my dog out for a whole season and not let him go get a retrieve," right? I do understand I'm in a unique position, right? So like I own, you know, 8 to 10 dogs all the time. So I always have an older dog to satisfy, my want of wanting my dogs to go pick up retrieve. So it is easier for me to have my varsity player, to have my JV player there. My JV player he doesn't get to play, but he gets to sit there and understand what the game's all about. And that's easier for me. But I have had so many clients, like I cannot tell you how many people have said, I did that and it was the absolute, this is my 4th dog or 5th dog, whatever. It was the absolute best thing I ever did for any of my dogs is go through that one season because you just backed it off, right? So then all of a sudden year 2, like that dog is so conditioned to everything that you can't train for. He's prepared. Like it's like, how often do we talk about an NFL quarterback that gets drafted number 1 or number 2 and they got all the talent, but they get thrown into the fire, with little experience, the wrong team, all this stuff, and the guy fails, right? Versus you talk about the guy that, sat behind Aaron Rodgers for 4 years and was prepared when he went and hit the field, right? That guy's set up for success, right? He's with the right team, he's had the right preparation. Like, but then again, we don't think of our dogs that
Right.
way, and so how do we set them up for success? That has to be, the goal for any specifically young dog, for any dog going into the field.
Man, I will never forget and talking to Dokken about that, where he told me, and I did this with Luna when she was young because I didn't have an older dog like you're talking about. And he was like, find somebody to be your shooter, go scout out those wood ducks you like, and don't bring a gun. Work that dog. Pay attention to it. Like hold that dog accountable and work it through these things and do not be the shooter. Be focused entirely on the dog. And I probably didn't do it as much as I should, but I did it a lot more than I would have ever considered. And it was like
Mhm.
a totally different world for me, and I feel that, I mean, this is maybe a weird parallel, but now, my daughters are hunting deer like crazy and I'm not carrying a weapon very much anymore. Not like I did for years and years and years. Right. The entire like vibe of that hunt changes so much where I feel like
Okay.
so much more confident about just making the right choices and just following the process through in the right way. And I see it when I take my daughters out. I see it when I take young dogs out, where it's like, as soon as you kind of set that aside and go, you're not going to be the one who gets the grip and grin to throw up on Instagram now. You're just here for this dog. You're putting in something that's really kind of a short-term thing when you consider the overall life of a dog, but the value is incredible.
Mm. And you'll have so much more satisfaction having done that, right? Like
100%.
when you go through a year of like guns away, I'm focused on the dog. We're on the fly on on the job training here, right? So we're working. I'm seeing this through a different lens, right? 'Cause I'm looking through the dog's eyes, and then all of a sudden you fast forward to the next year, and you're like, gosh, like look how well they're doing. There's gonna be so much pride and satisfaction that you have because you had the sacrifice and going through it, and I think that that is so valuable for so many of us of, going through that process, right? So, like, for me, I know I went through, like, that early phase of, man, I had to kill as many ducks as I possibly could. Why? I don't know. Like, I was just, young, and I felt like, pulling the trigger meant you were successful, and then I graduated through, I think, a little differently than a lot of people do because of my, the dog side of things, but, like, I went immediately into the dogs. I'm like, "Man, I really don't care about pulling the trigger. I just wanna be here, for the dogs." And now I'm here with my kids, and that's a whole 'nother evolution of looking, at things through their eyes. And, it does make you appreciate that process, right? Because if you're there pulling the trigger, you don't see all the things that are going on between those ears. Like, there's a lot of thoughts and a lot of emotion, a lot of, like, "Oh my gosh" moments. And if you're watching that, I think it's a really easy thing, to love and and then 2, just understanding that process. And I think when you see it, when you're not pulling the trigger and you're watching it, you're like, "Oh, like, yeah, he's not ready to get sent yet, but, like, his mind is getting blown right now."
Right.
And it's really a fun thing to watch.
So speaking of what's going on between their ears, um, I've always heard that, people have problems with vocal dogs, right? Like you said, if you figured out the magic formula to get dogs to stop whining and barking, you'd be a billionaire, and you would be 100%.
Right, right.
It's a very hard thing to cure once it's there. And I've had different trainers tell me that they think it's because the dogs don't know they're doing it. So correcting them on it is sort of like a lightning bolt coming out of the sky, that they don't connect with a behavior that they're doing. That dog breaks, or that dog doesn't come back right away, or something, drops that bumper at your feet instead of delivering it to hand. There's an action there that when you correct, that dog can make that connection. But do you think that they like truly don't really know they're doing it? It's sort of an involuntary thing that they just kind of like don't connect. It's like a intention, maybe.
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases, yes. I do think there are cases that the dog is just maybe being, a little egregious with it. Maybe it'll do like that wide open mouth, like, "Bruh," something like that.
Right.
Then I'm gonna correct it because you're doing it then. But if it's a what I've seen is that it frustrates people, right? So what happens when you get frustrated? You're either gonna reach over, make a correction, you're gonna hit the e-collar, make a correction, but the dog can't correct something that he doesn't understand is wrong, right? And so if it's coming out of, from an anxiousness standpoint, um, if it's coming out because of that, you're just going to make that dog more anxious by correcting them on something that they don't understand why they're being corrected. And so you actually make it worse, right? So you can just build up this anxiety. Now, with the one that does get me is, and I think if we're being honest with ourselves, we say this because we all love our dogs. We adore our dogs. We love that they want to be their love. But when that happens, more times than not, when I'm talking to people, what they'll say is like, he's just so driven, or he just loves, he wants to go so bad. And he just like that's rose colored glasses, right? That's you're looking at things trying to, because for me, I can show you a quiet dog that doesn't make a noise that wants to go just as bad, right? And he's when you say his name, he's going to go just as hard. And you know, so it is a bad habit. Now, again, I do think the reason I talk about genetics and why, like, I really do believe that's where it starts. And I think, I think, noisy dogs produce noisy dogs. The reason I even talk about that is because I do want people to understand, like, it may not be you. Like, it may be that this is just who this dog is, and you can rip your hair out trying to figure it out, and you're never going to get there, right? So sometimes you just have to accept that this is who this dog is. But I really do believe that starting the dog out the right way and developing them, in that progressional way instead of just throwing them to wolves and go, 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 and let's pump this up. Because I mean, you pump a dog up, there's only one way that they're going, and it's up, right? So you have to be able to just manage that, and it's just it's exciting, right? Like I had a client literally pick up a dog today, and I won't use his name because he's in the industry and the waterfowl industry in particular. And he looked at me and he goes, "Man, like I've got these hunts lined up in the Dakotas, and do you think that I could just take the puppy?" This is a 8-week-old puppy, right? You think I just take the puppy with in the blind? Like, yeah, is that a bad idea? And I looked at him, I was like, that is a terrible idea.
Terrible.
Like, yeah, no, do not do that. And he's like, well, you kind of walk me through why. I was like, okay, risk reward. Is the risk worth the reward? So in this case, the reward is you say, "Oh, like the noise didn't seem to bother," right? That's the reward, right? Because there's nothing more that's coming out of that. The risk is we have gun shyness, we have noise sensitivity, we have a dog that is just completely becoming a shell of herself because she has no idea what's going on. Like it is not worth that risk. And I think we all just get so wrapped up into the excitement of having that new young dog around, which it is awesome. I mean, I get to see it every day. Like
Right.
it is fantastic, and I love that people get so excited about it. But I'm always I'm a long-term person. I want to play the long game. Now I do understand so much of our society is the exact opposite, right? Like we can get dang near anything that we want in the world in a click and 2-day shipping, right? So like, but dogs are not that.
Right.
They are never going to be. It's not how it's going to work. And the more time you put into them, the more you're going to get out of them, right? So like, it's a process. You have to grow. And again, this is where I go back to, we all humanize our dogs until it's not convenient to humanize them anymore, right? So if we took a first grader and he was hitting off, a baseball off a tee, and then you're like, "All right, man, like you're gonna go at bat at Yankee Stadium tomorrow." Like, we all laugh and be like, "Yeah, that's ridiculous." But how is that any different than you taking a 6-month-old dog that just saw a bird and gun for the first time, and you're like, "All right, man, now we're gonna go on a mega pheasant hunt in South Dakota. We're gonna go on a big duck hunt to Saskatchewan. We're gonna like that's what that is."
Right.
And so building them up and preparing them for that, that's how you make them successful. It takes time. And that's the one thing that I do think is hard on people is just like spending the time to build them up and prepare them the right way.
Dude, I look at that stuff like over on the whitetail side of things, the amount of youngish people I talk to, like getting into bow hunting, who are obsessed with 150s and 170s, who've only killed 3 deer in their life, and will go out and get major buck fever and screw up over and over and over. And a lot of them will give it up because it's too hard, because they haven't worked through the process of becoming a good deer hunter first before becoming a trophy hunter. It's just like that. Like, there's just no way around it. Like, you can't shortcut this stuff. And you see this a lot. The topic that I get my ass in the sling over in the dog world all the time is e-collars, because people will be, how it is. Like, everybody who bumps into a training problem with a sporting dog immediately wants to go buy an e-collar. And you're like,
Uh-huh.
that is a great tool if you use it correctly and you know how to use it and you implement it at the right time and all of the qualifiers to make sure it sounds
That's
correct.
right.
But I'm always like, you probably don't know what you're doing yet. Like, you probably don't know how to train this dog in a way yet where you're going to jump to that because you think that's going to fix the problem, but the problem wouldn't be here if you were doing it right. Like, that's a
Well,
reinforcement tool
that's right.
later, and a long distance communication tool and a very valuable thing. But jumping to it, which is like super common, all that is a reflection on something going wrong on your end so far. And it's
Yeah.
really tough for people to understand that. But that kind of thing, I mean, I don't know if we're getting here in society, and I'm getting way off course, but like you said, we have it pretty easy. We can have whatever we want brought to our house pretty freaking easy. We can walk into the average Quick Trip or grocery store, and there's so many calories in there that we can just pick up and we don't have to work for, really. Life is fairly easy. But you see these trends with like fitness and some other stuff now where people seem to sort of be recognizing this side of life, like that you're talking about with these dogs, where it's like, yeah, there is no way around this other than just putting in tons and tons of time. And it's not actually even that. It's just a commitment to day after day after day. And it doesn't have to be a ton of time, but it has to be a consistent thing, just like working out or anything else, where it's like it might only be a half hour a day, or with a puppy, it only 5 minutes a lesson, 2 minutes a lesson, whatever. But those lessons they have to happen every day. And that's a hard thing to do.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Well, and then too, when you look at like when I say I look at the long game, like to me, rushing into that first season when a dog isn't prepared, like, I don't care about that first season. Yeah, I want years 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to be great, right? And if stuff goes terribly wrong that first year because you're not prepared, you're not gonna have those years, and you're not gonna at least not to the level of what you could have, yeah? And, so that's why I'm so big on, like, "Alright, let's pump the brakes," and if you need to get a dog in kind of a staggered form, right? So if, like, "Hey, my dog's 7, I wanna get a dog now so that I have the time and I'm not rushed, I'm not tempted, to get the dog in the field too early." I that's great, whatever you have to do for you to be able to approach this the way that it should be approached, but I, I'm really, really big on taking your time, like, I would much rather see a dog go into the field later than earlier because I know that dog is likely gonna be more prepared, but you still have to put in the work, like you said, Tony, like, if you're not putting in the work, the gym example is a great example, right? Because, like, yeah, an hour a day, you're not gonna, decide to go to the gym today, go to the gym for an hour, come back, take your shirt off, look in the mirror and be like, "Oh, like, that changed my life," right? But if you do that consistently, it compounds on itself and you will have that moment. You may not know when or where, but if you stay the course and are consistent, you will have that moment. Same thing with the dogs, right? One session isn't gonna cure it. One tool, like a collar, it's not a magic wand that comes in a box, right? Like, it's not gonna cure your problem. But if you stay the course and are consistent, you will have that moment. I promise you'll have that moment that you are so full of pride and so full of joy because, "Hey, I did that." Like, obviously with the dog, the team, but, like, I did that, right? Like, that dog could have been laying on the couch eating potato chips. Like, instead, like, we put in the time, put in the work, and we made this happen. Like there's to me, that's where the satisfaction comes. I love getting texts or emails, from or calls, from clients that have gone through that process. And man, like I've had grown men, 60 plus year old men crying as they're telling me a story because they're so full of pride and joy because hey, this was a you know 18-month or 2-year process to get to this point, and like we're here and because you do pour yourself into this and it's rewarding, man. I mean, there are very few things like it.
Yeah, it is. And it's, on just a little point you made earlier about y- the consistency of training, giving it something every day, maybe a couple of times every day versus the deciding, maybe on a Saturday, you're going to go try to work that dog for 3 hours and the wheels are going to fall off after 20 minutes. It's the same kind of thing, like you said about, you know, you put a lot of pressure on yourself if you get this hunting dog and you're like, I want this first season, I want to go to South Dakota and I want to get my limit of roosters every day. And I'm going to get that dog a billion bird contacts and it's going to be amazing. A better bet is to figure out a way to hunt some woodcock close to home on some public land when they migrate through it and get that dog out for an hour here, an hour there, get those reps in, get those small bird contacts in, and work up to that stuff instead of, like you said, all of a sudden this great big production hunt where it's like too much too fast for this young dog and it's just not ready yet. There's just a slow burn progression to this stuff. But like you said, and you keep saying, is if you go through it right, like you will never not do that. Like once you see what
Mhm.
that
Yep.
becomes for a dog, you will never not appreciate that process and try to make that happen because it's always worth it.
Yeah, and so much this comes down to owner expectations, right? Like, and we talk about it a lot when we send dogs home. Like, dog goes through training and goes home and is obedient on and off lead, is steady, is marking, is delivering a hand, is doing all these things, and naturally they want to pick the dog up and go right out on a hunt. Well, this is different, right? Like, we are not in a controlled environment anymore. Like, there's going to be so much learning that the dog has to do. There's so many new things you're going to throw, right? We're not taking, boat rides at, 4:30 in the morning when we're going out training, right? We're not, there's so many factors that go into it that we're not doing on a train. So the dog has to experience it. And again, analogy wise, I know I keep going back to sports, but Like, if you're in the batting cage and you're hitting, whether it's off a machine or off, coach, throwing you BP and you're hitting really well, when you step into that box at a game, you don't have that level of control anymore. Right now, the pitcher is trying to get you out. Right, it's more of a game. It's more than just being in there. And so, like for us, you can have a dog pretty dialed in at home and hitting off the tee, hitting off the BP machine. But all of a sudden, like you're going to the game, now all of a sudden there's more variables. There's the crowd noise, the elements, the weather, what the other team is doing, what the other pitcher is going to do to get you out. Like there's more to it. Like you can't just go from in the batting cage and be like, all right, man, you're doing great. Like you should be able to go hit home runs every time you're up. It's not like that. And so anytime you're going to throw variables into the equation, there's going to be a learning curve that has to be made to go be successful with, solving that problem. And so for us, it's all about, again, how do we make the dog be successful? It might be, the hide that you're in, making sure that the dog can see. It may be, the guns, right? Like I'm not bringing a young dog out on one of their first hunts with 8 guns in the blind, right? I'm having, hopefully 1 or 2. Let's make this thing easy. Let's make it successful. But a lot of that again comes down to us. The one that I think is always funny, is from an Upland standpoint, right? So I think many of us that have an older dog, they're like, oh, I'm gonna bring, the young puppo with the older dog because the older dog will teach the dog, the young dog what to do. No, they don't. I mean, they don't. Now I will agree with that young dog will likely follow the old dog and kind of start to like at least get somewhat of an idea of like what the old dog is doing. But the reality is that the old dog is going to get the bird contacts you're hoping the young dog gets because the old dog knows what he's doing. The old dog is probably going to get to the retrieve because the old dog knows what he's doing. All the things you're hoping that young dog experiences, the old dog is going to be the one experiencing, and the young dog is just run around behind him figuring it out. To me, I'd rather break that up, and that's why I love like if you're in a 2 dog setup, you're like, "Wow, when do I get the next dog?" I love when, again, God willing, everything happens and you don't lose the dog early, right? But like at 7, 8, 9 years old, that older dog's probably starting to slow down a little bit. Like we're not doing like these big long days anymore, right? So it makes it a little easier for a guy to go, okay, half the day I'm going to dedicate to my old dog, and half the day I'm going to dedicate to my young dog and give him the experience, and kind of work our way up into it. So then when my old dog is, you know, 11, now all of a sudden my young dog is, 3 or 2, and now he's ready to go do this, right? And they both kind of ease in and out of it. That's an ideal world, but I just, the old dog doesn't like go, hey, sport, let me take you under my wing and teach you everything I know. Like this is just not how it works.
No, I mean, a good way to look at that is to think that it's hard enough for us to be good trainers. Your old dog is
right. Yeah.
doesn't want the job, isn't going to take it, doesn't want to do it. Josh,
right.
We're out of time here. I got to pack up, take my daughters on a little hunt here very, very soon. I want to thank you so much for coming on. I want to get you back at some point, maybe get your bride on there too, to talk about puppies and bloodlines, because we dipped into that a little bit, but there's a lot we could cover there. Why don't you let everybody know where they can find your kennel, where they can find all your social, all that good stuff?
Yeah, so if you just look up Riverstone Kennels, so we're on Facebook, Instagram, riverstonekennels.com. You can find our website there. You can also find the Line of the Kennel. I'm happy to talk to anybody that wants to talk about training or looking for a puppy, anything like that. We didn't even get into genetics and breeding and all that stuff, which is obviously a huge part of this whole thing. Like you got to have the right player to coach in the first place. But yeah, I love this. I love talking dogs. I love, this is literally my life. And so, love to hear from anybody that wants to reach out and talk about dogs.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.
All right, buddy. Take care. Have a good hunt.
That's it for this week. I'm Tony Peterson. This has been the Houndations podcast. As always, thank you so much for listening and for your support. If you want some more dog training content, or maybe you're heading out west for a rifle hunt for something, maybe you're just getting into a tree stand, spend some time for whitetails, whatever, themeateater.com has tons of new content going up every single week. You can watch films. You can obviously go find other podcasts there. Our network keeps growing. We have a ton of cool shows on there. Or maybe you just want to read a how-to article or find a recipe for some roosters you're going to kill this week. Whatever. It's all over at themeateater.com. Go check it out.